Welcome back to the garage, mojitojeep fans. We're coming at you today with another lighting project courtesy of Diode Dynamics. This time they set us up with a set of their cowl brackets for the JL Wrangler. What these do is these are going to mount up right here on the cowl of the Jeep using the factory bolts, and then they also hooked me up with a set of their 6-inch light bars that are going to mount right to those brackets right here. So we're going to show you today how to mount the brackets, how to wire up the lighting. Let me show you what all comes with the kit. You're going to get the 2 supplied cowl brackets, and what's cool about these is with all the different slots here, it gives you basically an endless possibility of how you want to mount different lights if you don't go with the Diode Dynamics 6-inch kind of rectangular lights. It even allows you to mount some lights on the side here that would angle down at the ground. Probably helpful for wheeling and things like that. So it gives you a lot of options. You get 2 of these brackets, obviously 1 for each side. What's also cool is that they do supply factory style or factory looking black bolts for the brackets that match or kind of look very similar to the ones that come from the factory, as well as some spacers that are going to go between the bolt and the brackets on the Jeep. If you do choose to get the 6-inch light bars from Diode Dynamics, you're going to get the 6-inch light bar, which is the rectangular shape that looks just like the ones I mounted in the front bumper. And I did choose on this one to go with the floodlights so that it'll disperse the light a little more, since the front ones I did have the driving lights, which are, you know, further distance. So I thought it'd be good to add these as floods, which if I wanted to, I can change out the lens on these to the driving lights, but I decided to go with the flood ones. So we've got the pair of these, which have their harness coming off of them, the wire plug just like in the front lights. And then if you don't have the auxiliary switches like we do, it's going to come with the off-road heavy duty wire harness, which includes your actual switch and the quick connect harness to wire into the battery and then just run the switch inside. Again, just like in my bumper lights, I do have the auxiliary switches. So I did get the auxiliary OEM switch harness from Diode Dynamics, which just like the others makes it super simple to connect, plug into the wires and run them over to my factory wiring harness. So I'll show you how that's done. That's all that comes with the kit. It's all going to be super simple and easy to install. So let's go ahead and get started. So since I'm obviously starting on the passenger side of the Jeep, what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by removing the antenna here, just because I'm going to need to have access to this panel and actually probably remove it to get the wires run. So just having this out of the way makes things a little easier. Mine's on kind of loose, so I'm able to just loosen it by hand. You may need a little wrench or something to break yours loose. From the factory supplied Jeep toolkit, you're going to want to grab the little ratchet and the factory T40 Torx bit, or if you have your own set, you're welcome. You can use those, but since this is nice and handy, I'm just going to use this. And what this is going to allow me to do is loosen all 4 of these bolts. You only need to, for the bracket, you technically only need these 3, because that's how the bracket is going to mount in place. But I'm going to do this one just so I can get the wire run through as cleanly as possible. So I'm actually going to go ahead and remove this whole cowl piece. So that's one of the shorter ones. There's apparently a couple of different sizes here. I think the top 2 are going to be longer than these side 2. Same as the first one. And these top 2, I'm pretty sure are going to be fairly long. So with those 4 bolts released or removed, it allows this panel to just slide out. So this stuff slides underneath here, and then this just whole thing slides off. What it looks like underneath. Clearly it isn't fully painted from Jeep from the backside. So you can see you've got like a drain tube here, probably from the channel coming down that feeds the water through. I believe that's a drain tube. And then otherwise it's pretty much just open here. And I can see there's a little bit of a, let me bring you around here to this side. There's a little bit of foam in here, which I think we're gonna be able to easily kind of run the wires through to the, into where the battery is here and the factory wires. So I'm gonna leave that open, and what we'll do is we'll go around to the other side and we'll pop that cowl off on the other side. Pretty simple, exact same thing here on the driver's side. So we'll just pop these 4 bolts out. And then again, we can just slide this panel out. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the wiring harness and I'm gonna pop the hood, and what I wanna do is I'm gonna try to kind of lay out where my wires are gonna run. So this way I'll get the wiring harness run into place, and then that way I'll know kind of how things need to be situated with the wiring. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so with the hood popped, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the harness. And what you'll see when you open this up, you've got your power wire, which is gonna go to my auxiliary switches, the switch harness. And then you've got your ground, which also has the fuse built into the harness here. So this has a 15 amp blue fuse inside. And then from there, you've got a longer end with a plug. And that one is gonna go to the driver's side, because once I run it, I'm gonna need to run it along the cowl over to the passenger side, which just needs a shorter one, because this run just needs to go to where the battery is on the passenger side. So it's pretty much how it's gonna lay out, like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and start from the driver's side so that I can figure out how this is gonna get run across. So I grabbed one of the lights just to see how long the wire is coming off the light, because if this is gonna be mounted up on top here with on the cowl bracket, I just wanted to see about how much slack I was gonna have with this harness to see, you know, how long I'm gonna need on the wiring harness coming up and through. So it looks like there's gonna be enough here to mount this, run this through underneath this little foam piece into the engine bay, and have this tucked in there. So what I did is I just kind of tucked all the stuff that's gonna go over by the battery on that side, just to get it over there, and then I kind of tossed myself the harness across the top here along the cowl or the firewall, just to get the wire over here to see what I'm looking at. And then I just got to decide my route to try to keep things as neat and clean as possible in here. What I decided to do is I flipped the hood back just to give me more light and more room to work here. I'm going to try to pull these bolts along, these nuts along the top of the cowl here, and see if I can just tuck the wires in behind this little plastic trim piece that's along here. I think that'll be the cleanest route. Yeah, it looks like hopefully I'll be able to just slide the wires behind this little bracket here. Actually, it looks like there's only one more here on this side. So 2 on that side, 1 over here for this bracket. Let me do this one first and see how loose this plastic shroud is. Okay, so rather than trying to pop this coolant reservoir up off these bolts, I think I can tuck it down below and around it and up, and then pull it tight up into here. So let's see if this works out for me. So I'm gonna attempt to use my wire coat hanger trick that I used for pulling wires when we were doing the lights inside. I created it into a U. I'm just gonna try to tuck it through where it comes back up towards the middle of the Jeep. And now I've got it kind of tucked up, I've got it pulled up in here. And I think now I can take this harness and tape it to it. So using my electrical tape, I'm just gonna put a bunch around the wire here to the coat hanger to make sure that it's taped on nice and secure. And then I'm gonna see if I can use this to tuck it down to the route I was hoping to go. And look at that, look how easy that pulled through here now. So I really don't need a lot, so this is probably enough excess coming through. I'm gonna go ahead and pull off the electrical tape, toss my new favorite tool, my coat hanger, out of the way. And now I've got the harness here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work it up. All right, so I was able to get it through to where it's right here on top, and then I just need to do is tuck it. I'm gonna try to get it in behind this little plastic clip here So let's see if I can get that fed in there, and then I think we're good. We'll just have to keep tucking it along the top. Okay, so this is fairly loose here. What I want to do is just try to slide this back enough around the bolt that's sticking up that I can just kind of slide this in and around and underneath. This is definitely the most challenging part of this whole install, is running this wire along the cowl, just because I like to keep it neat. Yeah, you could probably just drape it across the top there and it would be fine and good, but I don't like that. I like my wires to look clean and factory. I finally got it. So the wire harness, you can see, is kind of tucked underneath these clips and underneath, and I'm gonna make it nice and clean along the top here, and I think that'll hold it in place in a nice clean location. So on this side, I think I'm pretty well set, so I can go ahead and put the nuts back on here, and then just go to the other side and I'll pull the wires tight through. And then the last spot I need to do is there's one more here, because I already got this first one on this side hooked in, so I just need to get it in through behind this one, just like I did over there. So I grabbed a different one of my little pry tools to kind of pry up underneath here. Oh yeah, that makes a big difference. This is by no means the easiest spot to run the wire, but I think it's gonna pay off to be really clean. And there we go, we got it through. And I'm gonna kind of tuck it up under the cowl as best as I can. As I tighten down all the bolts, I'll try to push it under. All right, so I'm gonna start by tightening down from that end. Just making sure that it's nice and clean and everything's where I want it as I tighten. Just put these two nuts back on the passenger side. So what I did then to wrap things up is I tucked it in as neatly under the cowl here as I can, to where you barely even see it. You know, one spot here is a little tight, so it didn't really want to feed under. So you can kind of see it there, but otherwise it's very nicely hidden all the way to here. I'll probably run a zip tie around this harness, this wiring harness to it. And then I just got to clean up the wires under here and connect it. All right, so here on the battery side, the passenger side, is where the factory auxiliary wiring wires are. You can see this is my positive wire that goes to the Diode Dynamics grill light bars that I already installed. Okay, so I think I mentioned earlier that I was going to connect this to the same one so that they both be on the same switch. But I think that because for now I don't need my other auxiliary switch, I'm going to go ahead and just connect it to that one for now. And that way I'll be able to turn them on and off separately. So I'm going to strip back this one. It's the green with looks like pink, green wire, pink line. I'll connect to that one so it'll be on a separate switch. And then I just need to ground this, which I'll go to the same ground, which is right here as the previous one. Okay, so with that strip back, I stripped back quite a bit of the wire. I'm just going to twist that up, and I'm going to go ahead and take the positive, red positive with the connector on here that they supply, slide it over, and then we're going to go ahead and crimp it down. Give it a tug, make sure it's nice and tight, which it seems to be. And what I'm going to go ahead and do next is connect the ground wire. So I just need a 10mm ratchet. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the nut here. Shouldn't take much. Just loosen it enough to be able to get this slid down on there. And I got that on. I'm going to go ahead and snug it back up. Okay, so now what I want to do is, before I go ahead and finish cleaning up all these wires and tucking all this excess wire away, I'm going to go ahead and grab my two lights, plug them in on both sides, and we'll test things out just to make sure that everything works before we get it all clean. So I got one light here. I'm just going to plug this harness in there, and I'll do the same. I'm just going to set it in here, connect the harness. I'm going to hop in the Jeep and just turn the ignition on. Okay, and clearly it is working on my auxiliary number, I believe it's auxiliary 2 right now, so I know I'm good and I can go ahead and clean up the wires. I'm going to begin with the cowl brackets on the driver's side, and what I did was I kind of set the light up here out of the way so that I have the wire tucked in here, kind of how I think it's going to go. And then this is just going to go, if you can see this foam here is really easy to move around. I'm just going to tuck it around. And what I want is there's a little gap here and I want it through that gap. So I got it through there, fed into the engine bay underneath, just so that it's kind of tucked where I want it. Once it gets in place on the cowl thing, it's going to go, you know, this light's going to sit somewhere in here. So I just want it to have, you know, be tucked in between this crease here. Grabbing the cover piece that's going to go back in here, what I realized is that this wire is going to actually need to come in from the back because of how this is. It needs to come in here and under. So I need to make sure that when I slide this in, that the wire is kind of in the place it needs to be. So for now, I'm gonna try to feed back some wire to give more slack now that that's in place, so I can get that out of the way. And then just try to feed this back in where it needs to go. And there we have it. So that's how it's gonna sit. You'll see the wire tucked through there, but it'll be just barely visible when it's all said and done. So the bracket's gonna sit in just like this. So in the kit, you're gonna see 2 of these bigger spacers for each side. And then the third one is this smaller spacer. It's skinnier in diameter. And that's gonna be the one for down here. These 2 are gonna go up top there, so I can set those 2 in place. I'm gonna begin by putting in the original factory one back into this back bolt space here, because that one is gonna stay the factory one. Now, I'm going to recommend that you begin with this bottom one, because you can set the top into place and it'll kind of hold itself there. Diode Dynamics supplies all new bolts. So you're going to take the shorter one of the 3 and feed that through. Oops, don't be like me and knock that around. So I'm going to feed it through and get it started. Okay, so that is started down here, and I'm going to go ahead and get it a little tighter to hold it in place. And then I can grab the top 2 bolts for up here, which are these much longer ones. You'll see they've got the thread kind of up at the top. Those are going to feed down through. And of course then tighten all 3 down. Make sure they are nice and snug. Okay, nice and solid. You can see I'm moving the whole Jeep with it right now. Next up, you can go ahead and grab the supplied light mount bracket. And you can kind of decide where you want it to lay out on the cowl bracket. We kind of want ours to be centered. There's a total of 8 slots. We're going to go in the 4th from the outside because that seems to center it up nicely. Along with the bracket is a bolt, a washer, and a nut. I'm going to put the bolt and washer down from the top. The nut's going to go on the bottom. We'll go ahead and get it started. I'm going to kind of leave it fairly loose for now, because once we get the light in place, we may want to adjust it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like it is. Looks like we should be able to still be able to get a wrench in underneath here when we're ready to tighten it up. So I just grabbed one of the bolts here and kind of hand threaded it into the outside, and grab the other one for the other side. Okay, so I didn't see any washers supplied with the bolt to mount this up, but I decided I've got some of my own, so I am going to go ahead and use a washer on the outside. You can see here I did put one in there in between the bracket and the nut, or the bolt. And I'm going to do that on both sides, just so that when you're tightening this down, it's not scraping into the bracket. So I'm just going to grab my ratchet, and I'm going to use a little extension with the 10 millimeter. I think for now, I'm gonna mount them all the way to the top, just so that that'll give me more room to adjust or tighten down the bolt underneath. And then I'll see how I like it later on and adjust accordingly. You'll notice that when you first start these bolts in, that there seems to be a big gap on either side, but as you tighten it down, it does pull in tight to lock in the light. Okay, so this one is all set for now. I can go ahead and peel off the plastic protector over the lens. Basically just gonna complete the same steps on the passenger side. As you can see, I got the light set up here just to get the wire kind of into place again like we did on the other side. Get it kind of situated into place. As we learned, it does need to go further back. And then once you've got them both snugged, then you can go ahead and lock this bottom bolt in place. Obviously it looks like I need a little bit more length of wire, so I'm gonna actually have to pull this back through a little bit from in here to give myself some more slack to get it back where I want it mounted here. And I'll go ahead and lock this one down, and then I can tighten up the wire. So one thing I wanted to test right away is if these lights are going to interfere with the hood, which I like to flip this back all the way sometimes. It does look like on both sides I'm just barely touching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up this bolt and move it back just enough that I get a little bit of more clearance there. Now I've got about a 1/4 inch of gap there. And I'm going to go repeat the same thing on the other side. With that being done, the lights all mounted up, the last thing to do is clean up my wires, plug in both sides, which because of the shortness on this side, I did have to pull this back through underneath. So I'm going to take this end and just kind of feed it through under the cowl area here, where I can then plug it in. And then I'll neatly tuck this and clean it and hide it away back in there. And then take this and just snug all this away. Down in here, I'll grab some zip ties, zip tie it into place, and put some electrical tape around my connections here again so that that's nice and clean, and button all this up. Just like that, we've got the cowl mount bracket from Diode Dynamics installed with their 6-inch light bars. Don't forget, you're gonna wanna go into your settings in the radio and adjust the auxiliary switch settings to how you want them, whether you want them to be able to be powered on by battery or if you want them to only be able to be used with the ignition on. I showed you how to do that in our previous video when we installed the light bar here in the front bumper. I'll link that in the description just in case you want to check that out to see where you go to set up those display options. But for now, I think it looks pretty damn cool. Another great job from Diode Dynamics, making things simple and easy to hook up and install. I can tell already, even though it's blinding me and might be blinding you in the camera here, but it does disperse the light a lot more with those covers over them as opposed to the ones in the front bumper here. So it's kind of cool. I've got some playing around to do. I don't know if I like them all the way to the top, so I may lower them down a little bit and adjust them, or I may angle them out so that we'll get more of a flood out to the side. We want to just say thanks again for checking out our videos. We appreciate all the support. Channel keeps growing. If you don't already, make sure you subscribe. Give us a big thumbs up on this video and comment below. Let us know what you like. If you have any questions about what I did here, and I'd be glad to answer them. I'm trying to check them every day. So we'll see you again in the next video. We got more coming. I may actually be starting on another video right now as I end this one. So if you see me in the same outfit for the next video, that's why. But thanks again. See you in the next one.